Good afternoon over there. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. There are less people, but they won. Wow. What a day. Beautiful. I'm so excited to be here. Look, we talked a lot about innovation, but the real thing is I want to talk about the challenge we are facing and actually are we measuring the right things. Okay? Yes? So, let's start measuring the right thing. We only have one planet. Okay? Very important. That's where we start. So, and then we have those guys. You know what they did, right? This is Paris. This is when we agreed. We all agreed. I don't know who was there from you. You all were there, but they really made a big difference. And they actually set the policies, or actually the goals, that we will have to abide by in the coming years. Those people. Yeah? And what they have said is the following, and why it's so important and so relevant. Agriculture is actually the second most polluting process in the world, after energy. So that's the message that came out. The message came out, food production, the way we do food production is the second largest polluting process in the world. And we know many years the big oil, fossil oil were the big bad guys, but actually they are starting to say, actually our industry is also, because we just couldn't tell what's the story. And if we look at it, what it really means in megatons, because at the end, it's all about numbers. So in 2010, our industry emitted 12 megatons of carbon. 12 megatons of the total almost 50 megatons. And why it's so important that we know that? Because those 12 megatons, 6 megatons are actually coming from what they call agriculture and forestry, land, and other land use. And 6 megatons actually from real food production. So 6 megatons actually coming from the way we actually use the land, and only 6 coming from actually the real food. The other thing that they have said is that if we continue to do the business as we are going to do, we're going to have actually food being 15 megatons, and that's not acceptable. Not acceptable because if we want to limit the increase of temperature by 2 degrees, food production cannot emit more than 4 megatons. You see the challenge? It's coming, right? It's coming. Today we talked a lot about, more population. We have to produce more. But Paris is saying, no, we only can emit 4 megatons from the 12 that we have today. So if you look at it, how is the gap coming, right? So the gap is that we have to go from 13 trillion calories to 20-something trillion calories. I don't even know how much that is, but there's a lot of zeros. I don't really know, but it's a lot of zeros. And we have actually to do, so that's an increase of 50 to 60%. But at the same time, we have to go from 12 and not go to 15, go to 4 megatons. So if you put it in a graph, that means that in the coming 30 years, that's not long, we have to actually every calorie produced has to be 4 to 5 times more efficient per calorie. So I'm just trying to make it, no, we have only 30 years if we're going to get to the 4 tons, and society is going to push us there. We have to be 4 to 5 times more efficient in calories. So we have to understand, what are we measuring? What are we measuring? Yeah? So, what's the right reference? What are we actually measuring today? Most of the things you read in the newspaper, what are they talking about? They're talking about, yes, meat is a big polluter, right? Yes, you can see here. Because they're measuring how much emissions per grams or per kilos. But the issue is that we don't live by kilos. We survive as humans actually by something else, by calories. Because if you eat a lot of volumes, but there's no energy in it, we die. But if you only eat, now think about it. So if you look at it from a calorie point of view, maybe the whole thing starts to look very different, right? If you look at calories point of view, actually grains is the lowest. Processed fruit is the highest. Although it's the lowest if you look only by grams, but it's the highest because now I'm talking about the whole world, right? So it's because we have to process it, packaging is very expensive, we usually eat mandarins that we want to eat mandarins the whole season, right? So when there's off-season, they import it from somewhere, so it's that shaded part is actually the transport of it. So actually, then in this way, then you start measuring completely differently, right? Are we measuring the right things? Are we measuring the right things? But there's one other problem. We don't live from calories. We live from the 21 nutrition factors. Because if we only would live by calories, we could all eat sugar. Like sugar is a very good carbon. Great, right? Low emissions, and you eat a lot, but we will die. It's good, I know, there will be, eating all the foundation chocolates. Everybody at the Rabobank Foundation chocolates, they're good, you're supporting the world. That's very good, but if you only eat chocolate and only eat the foundation chocolate, you're going to die. So the thing is, we have to balance that. So let's look at different. Milk. Who had no dairy product in the last months around here? Please stand up. One. You see? Thank you for doing it, for admitting. You see? You all had dairy, so milk is very important. So let's go to milk and see how important it is. So first thing, the good things of milk. 6 billion people actually drink or use milk or anything every month. So we have 7 billion people in the world right now, so it's almost everybody. Other good thing of milk, it's a big business. We make money. How many dairymen here? No dairymen over there? Oh yeah, hands up, thank you. So a lot of you live from it. It's the 3rd largest provider of protein. Nutrients dense, so good nutrients, so good. But there are also bad things. It actually represents 3 to 4% of the old emissions we see today in the world. And that brings us to the fact that people think that cows should walk like this. It's a big issue. That's what people think about it, right? Because they're not informed. Because we are measuring the wrong thing. I go back to that. So, dairymen, the business is doing very well because they have been able to reduce the emissions, right, per ton very well. So from 2.8 to 2.5. Even if you go further, if you look at our industry here, the region here, especially the average here is actually the lowest emission per liter produced, right? So if the world average is not 2.5, it's 1.3. So we are here talking about the number ones in the world, okay? So congratulations. But I love milk. I'm not trying to make something wrong about milk. I love milk because it's very important. Because if we measure the right things, milk suddenly is very important. So let's then look at milk from a carbon. I know water is a big issue, but let's look at carbon, because Paris is about carbon. So we have to understand that also. So if you look at 100 grams of milk, it's used on 100 grams of CO2. That's more or less the thing. But if you look at actually the most important thing is, which is actually the nutrition density of milk, it's 50. It's a big formula, but basically what it says, 9 out of the 21 nutritions that you need to use every day will be found in milk. So they call this the nutrition density. So it's a very high nutrition density, right? So let's go now to think about soya drink, because that's what a lot of our millennials and Gen Z is doing. Okay, you know what? No more milk because that's bad for the environment, and let's go to the soya beans, right? So the soya drink, I cannot say soya milk anymore because then I go in prison, right? That's how I understand here, right? So it's soya drink, okay? But that's people think about soya drink, right? So let's look at the emission of soya drink. Oh, very good, right? A very low emission. Yeah? But then, let's look at nutrition density of soya milk. The problem in nutrition, there is only 1 or 2 nutrients that we need every day in soya milk. So, are we measuring the right things? No? Are we measuring the right thing? Are we telling the right story? What's better, milk or soya drink? Huh? Are we really telling the story, or is the industry telling what is better for the environment, actually? For environment, even if it's more nutritious, because at the end, we as a society, so let's go to beer. Who likes beer? Are you ready for beer? I thought so. I'm going to be quick, okay? All right, okay. Beer, right? So beer, we almost has as much, for 100 grams of beer, 100 milliliters, we all emit so much as milk. But I'm going to disappoint you. There is no nutrition factor in beer. So there's only one thing in beer, it's happiness. We need that also, okay? So let's tell the right story, that if you drink beer, you get happiness. That's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so let's put it in perspective then. So if you then add both things together, the emissions, and correlate that with the nutrition density, you get a ranking. So, I mean, I could do it for meat, I could do it for a lot of things, but I just got this drink here because that's kind of the millenniums going out there. We saw that nice package of that Oatly, right? Saying, oh, that's the best thing in the world. But in reality, Oatly is not very far away of a soy drink because it's zero, right? Actually, the thing is, we as society, we as people, we need nutrition. So as long as we don't go out there and start storing what is actually nutritional value of actually the emissions, we will never get to the 4 tons. Because we're going to take the wrong decisions because we are going to actually produce carbon with things that are not nutritious. So soy drink is here. Beer is there. And the champion is milk. So you producers of milk, congratulations. Right? So that's the story. You have to go out there. You know, average person in the whole world today, we actually, to feed itself, on average in the world, we actually use 2.5 tons of carbon. So that's on average, the whole world, that's what we are using, right? 2.5 tons. If we would price it today, we think that the price of a ton of CO2 equivalents is more or less $100 US dollars. So meaning that on average, right, the value that a person is consuming in the world today is around $250 a year, okay, of nature. So actually everybody, we think it's not too much money, but if you multiply it by 6 billion or 7 billion or 10 billion, it's a lot of money. So we have to be, so we actually, what the price of nature, which we are not putting in to the price, is actually this 2.5 tons. That brings me to the formula that Wiebe came this morning and talked about. So Wiebe talked about this formula. Because basically, we all together as primary producers or food producers, we actually are doing one very simple thing. We are actually matching consumption plus waste equals to what we have to produce. Very simple, right? So let's start on waste. We talked a lot about waste. They're a very good idea. So there's no reason why we could not take the 4 megatons of waste that we pollute or we emit and get to 0. Just by being smart. I mean, we saw ideas, we saw a lot of things, we talk about circular economy, look at your business. So then, from the 12, 4 we already got out, right? So we already have 8 tons. So we only have to do 4 more tons. So and then the only way of going there is that you have to look at the consumer. Have to look at the consumer. Today, a consumer, how does he know what he's buying has a high or a low footprint? Today, somebody going to the consumer. So now I look at politicians. How are we going to make sure that if somebody goes to the supermarket and has 2 fruits in front of him, 1 apple, and now going to the kiwis, 1 kiwi apple and 1 US apple, how does he know which one is actually more polluting and which one is less polluting? Although they are the same price. And any consumer that would have this choice, I have 2 apples here. This one is $1 and has consumed almost no carbon, and this one has consumed a lot of carbon because it came from very far away. What would the consumer choose? He will probably go because he doesn't know. So I think, and Nick was very clear on that, the only way of solving it is to make clear for the consumer what choices he is making. And then we get to the P of production, which is us. We know that we can be more efficient. We have been doing it very well. But we also know that the solution is the way we do farming. The solution goes through the fact that we can store a lot of carbon, but who is going to pay for it? Who is going to pay for the changes? I think we really need legislation where we actually, as farmers, are paid for good behavior, are paid for the investment that if you sequester and if you put 2 or 3 more tons into the ground, that you also paid. The value of a ton of carbon is $100. So why are we not paid for that? I just don't get it. So that's one of the things that Rabobank is really going for, is that we have to make sure that we price good behavior and that therefore we are paid for the investments, because it's just reality. We have data that we can show that costs money to transfer your farm. It costs money, right? And you go through a period that you have a more negative cash flow before you get the positive cash flow. So that has to be helped. So in our view, that's where we really have to come together and help. Also in research, there's very little research about carbon sequestration. There's actually very little research about how can you reduce the emissions of a dairy cow. We all know that there are a lot of solutions. You have the rumen, you can change the food, you can put a device in there, you actually can separate the manure, you can do a lot of things, you can have grass with deeper roots, so there's a lot of things, but we have just not researched that. We have not researched that, because our research in the past always has been more volume. More volume. That was the only thing we had. So that's our commitment also through our funds as Rabo, and we are looking at how can we make sure that we also start researching what's impact, how can we actually reduce the nature. Because only when we prove that we are doing the right things, in my view, we can also have the consumer to our side. Our license to operate is actually really, in my view, dependent on the way we can explain on the story and measure the right things and go out there. So who knows who made this quote, actually? Obama. Who would say that an American president would make a quote like that, right? But this is reality. This actually, I think this is the way most of the millennials and the Gen Z is thinking. So I think we have the obligation to fulfill that. Yeah, so you're getting very close to be here, Peter. So I would like to thank you really also in name of Wiebe and everybody that you are here, that you come out in this big group, that you really are passionate about your business, and we are actually passionate about banking you. We are passionate about bringing finance, we are passionate about knowledge, we are passionate about the networks we can create. And as we are here, and we have so many nationalities and different producers and all coming together, when you go, please, when you later go and have the beer, please make sure that you look around you and see and just start talking to somebody you have not met yet. Can I ask you that? Because that's one of the very important things, is network. And just ask the question is, what's the lever? I really like the lever story, so that's very important. So thank you very much. Let's measure the right things. We live from nutrition. So what we have to be sure that when we talk about carbon emissions that we have to reduce, we talk about nutritious carbon emissions. Thank you very much.